Chicken tikka masala as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Clearly,
Complacency.
this way last time.
Being complacent.
Trying to get down the weight. Because like last time we started fucking dehydration.
Well, just like today when you ran out of water.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, it's been nice to finish earlier in the day, eh? Let's just slugging back and like just getting here now, setting up and everything.
Good, eh? So good. You have to get one of these next time, eh?
Furniture and poles. Yeah, they're pretty good. Great kid in there, you know. It's not the back of the workshop. Yeah, I wanted that.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that one. That was hiking roughly 70 kilometres of the Bibbulmun Track in Western Australia. More specifically, Brookton Highway to Albany Highway. Logistics wise, what we did was we both met at the Albany Highway intersection at around 7:30 in the morning. Left Hayden's car covered in the bush there, jumped in my car, drove about 45 minutes to the Brookton Highway intersection, left my car there, and that's where we started our hike at around 8:15, 8:30 in the morning. The first day was about 25 kilometres where we essentially double-hutted it, and to be completely honest, I was a bit underwhelmed with this section of the trail. A large portion of it was burnt out due to prescribed burns in the area, which I understand has to happen in order to reduce the impact that a fire in the summer season would have. But yeah, it's really not very easy on the eye when you're walking through all this burnt out area, and you know what it should look like, but yeah, it's just black and burnt out and really just lacking any life whatsoever. But nonetheless, we ended up getting into Monadnocks campsite at about 3:30 in the arvo, and we were, to be completely honest, quite relieved. It was 28 degrees that day, and when you've been hiking for 7-8 hours, yeah, you definitely start to feel it. We did pull over a couple of times just to have a bit of a breather and chill out in the shade and recoup a little bit, just purely from the heat. So yeah, when we got to Monadnocks campsite, it was quite a relief. Although once we got there, we quickly realised we had another problem on our hands, and that was ticks. Hayden found one on his mat pretty much straight away when he was blowing it up, and shortly after that I found one crawling on my tent as I was setting it up. So that was quite horrific to find, and I ended up throwing mine up on the top bunk, seemingly thinking that ticks might not want to climb that high, but it seemed to pay a little bit of a dividend because I didn't get any ticks overnight and couldn't find any in the morning. So I'm going to say that was a little bit of a win there. But for anyone that has been watching the channel since the start, they may notice that this is a strike rate of 2 from 2. I had been to Monadnocks campsite before, and I was absolutely covered head to toe in salt and pepper ticks. I went with a mate and we ended up climbing to a sort of rocks just past the Monadnocks campsite, sat down and looked at our legs, and yeah, absolutely realised we had at least 200 of those salt and pepper ticks on us, and yeah, that was really quite gut-wrenching to find that. So not having a good run with the Monadnocks campsite. Other than that though, it was a reasonable night's sleep. We had the entire hut to ourselves, so can't really complain in that regards. The next day we got up bright and early at sunrise and started our 27-kilometre hike to Nerang campsite. And in my opinion, this was by far the most interesting and scenic of the 3 days. There was 3 peaks to climb, and they were all really amazing with great views at the top. In terms of elevation gain, it was by far the hardest, but once you got to those peaks, any worries or aches and pains that you had were quickly diminished once you took in those awesome views. In my opinion, Mount Cooke was the most specky of the 3 peaks. We did spend about 15-20 minutes up there just chilling out on the boulders and admiring the views. Did get the drone up for a little bit, and of course couldn't resist doing the classic droney. But after Mount Cooke, it was pretty much all downhill and very flat terrain until we got to Nerang campsite. And upon setting up, that's when we realised there was an absolute motherload of tick infestation around the campsite. Not too sure whether it's just purely where we chose to set up our tents. We did have a couple of good indicators off the bat that there was a lot of ticks lying around the place. Hadn't even set up our gear yet, and Hayden spotted one, and then I'd spotted another one shortly after that just crawling along the ground. So that should have given us a pretty good pre-warning of what was to come, but we decided to just stuff it and set up our tents anyway. And yeah, I do think we ended up paying the price for that. It was really quite gross sitting inside my tent and watching these ticks crawl all around it, and knowing that they were trying to get to me, yeah, really just made me shiver and really felt quite gross. There was one point there where I counted 7 ticks crawling on my tent at the one stage, and I couldn't help but feel absolutely gross, and I'm still shivering about it now. But it is what it is, and we'd set up where we did. It wasn't much point trying to move. Once we set up, they were obviously going to be all through the gear regardless. So yeah, we just kind of decided to stick with it. But that is the main reason why there wasn't much footage of our dinner that night. I purely just wanted to get out of my tent, cook dinner, and get back in my tent as quickly as possible. So I didn't bother filming any of our cooking that night. There was a bench down at the campsite there, but I just had my feet up it and I was just kind of sitting on the bench, yeah, not letting my feet dangle over too much, just in case a sneaky tick was walking by and was looking for a bit of a feed. In the morning though, the cold seemed to be on our favour, as the ticks really weren't moving too much. I found one on my tent straight away as soon as I woke up. It was almost like eyeballing me, but yeah, the cold really seemed to affect it. I just flicked it off from the inside, and that was pretty much it. I looked outside, did a bit of reconnaissance for any ticks before I jumped out, put as much of my gear away inside my bag as I could before I started packing up. And then yeah, me and Hayden just tried to pack up as quickly as we could and get on the way. But yeah, that was really quite gross. Also, I forgot to mention that I did find one tick on my fly net at one stage. I was trying to shoo it away and I couldn't go away for some reason. So yeah, asked Hayden to have a look at it, and he confirmed that it was actually a tick on my head net, and it wasn't on the outside, it was actually on the inside. So yeah, that was really gross as well. In total, I got 3 ticks, and I reckon Hayden must have got about 10 or 11 on him. So I definitely got the lucky end of the stick with that one, but yeah, really don't wish that on anyone. Yeah, super gross, and ticks were a huge problem on this hike. So on the 3rd day, we got up bright and early again at sunrise and tackled the trail. It was only a tad over 19 kilometers in length, so yeah, we figured we could knock it out before lunchtime. For me, this section of the trail was really quite mundane. It's pretty much flat the whole way. The fauna and flora was basically the same, and there was a few 4-wheel drive tracks thrown in there as well. So for me, yeah, it wasn't too interesting, but I'm not too sure how much of that was factored in, knowing that I was going home in a couple of hours and I could potentially be snoozing in my own bed. But nevertheless, it was quite a nice walk, being 20 kilometers. The last couple of kilometers after we got to the last campsite, we ended up doing a bit of trail running for about 2-3 kilometers. Purely, I think, just because we were a little bit bored and super keen to get back home. But yeah, that was something to spice it up at the end a little bit, and finished up the hike with a decent sweat on. On another note, it is really starting to warm up here in Western Australia. And of course, that makes it hard to get outdoors and do all these hikes that I would like to do. So I will probably be chasing the cooler weather, which of course means traveling down south, but I am not too sure how many hikes there is down that area that I haven't already done. So in saying that, there may be some other sort of hiking related videos that I do end up putting up in the future. I do have a gear video that I am planning to release in a couple of weeks time, so stay tuned for that one. I have been teasing it for a while now, but it is definitely going to come out. So I hope you enjoy that one, and until then, I will see you on the next one.
Yeah, sitting outside my tent after this. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Fuck this. I want to do a full check over and then just hop in my tent and then don't come out.
Piss the tent if I have to.
Yeah. You reckon everyone will think that it's sex time now that the chocolate's out?
Yeah, maybe.
It's business time.